everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Courtney Ryan, and today we're going to be talking about the fact that 63% of men under 30 are electively single. Let that sink in for a second. I know I've covered similar topics in the past, and this is kind of old news at this point, but I wanted to go through this with you guys and share some of my thoughts from a woman's perspective here, and even more specifically, a woman who makes content for men. Because the reality is that we are experiencing a tectonic shift in dating. The first one being here that 63% of men under 30 are electively single, as I mentioned, and this is up from 51% in 2019. Experts are blaming erotic alone time online as a major culprit. The next one, in the worst case scenario, the young American man's social disconnect can have tragic consequences. Young men commit suicide at 4 times the rate of young women. The next statistic here is that women now collect nearly 60% of bachelor's degrees. Another one here, as of 2022, Pew Research Center found 30% of U.S. adults are neither married, living with a partner, nor engaged in a committed relationship. Nearly half of all young adults are single, 34% of women, and a whopping 63% of men. And you're probably thinking, well, how are only 34% of women single, but 63% of men are single? That is because a lot of women are dating the same men or going for the same men. Not great. And this one blew my mind, but honestly, I wasn't that surprised. And it says only half of single men are actively seeking relationships or even casual dates. According to Pew, that figure is declining. So I really just wanted to gather those because that's kind of what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the video. Those were the biggest standout statistics to me in all of the research that I did here. I think there is a lot to unpack here, and we're going to kind of get into that. So let's get going. The first thing I wanted to do is share some of the most common Instagram responses that I got. So reading through the responses was interesting because I was reading the same responses over and over and over again. And it was very easy to sift through the data and pinpoint the most common responses. And I'm going to go more in depth with some of these a bit later because I all think they kind of fit into different categories. So again, I had asked, what are the biggest struggles you're having with dating at the moment? The first thing people said was hookup culture, people only wanting casual flings, not wanting to be in a long-term relationship or anything serious. The second was social anxiety, a fear of rejection, or just the overall approach. They're scared to approach women. Next was feeling hopeless and invisible. The next was ghosting and flaking, unrealistic expectations, no matches on dating apps, and just struggling to meet women in general. They don't know where to go, and worrying that they're going to end up alone. And if we have to narrow it down here, I think there are a few key reasons as to why these struggles that I just mentioned are the most common struggles that people are experiencing. I think there's a reason why these are happening and just continuing to become more prominent in people's lives. The first thing that I think is causing a lot of these problems is isolation. This here says, these statistics tell a sadder truth about this generation of men, NYU psych professor Niobe Way told the outlet. We're in a crisis of connection, Way said. Disconnection from ourselves and disconnection from each other, and it's getting worse.
I think on the point of isolation, men are looking for connection, but a lot of times in society, they're told you don't deserve connection until you get to this certain point. Think about telling a 20-year-old, hey, you can't talk to anybody, or you're not good enough to talk to anybody until you get to this point. Heck, even 30, 40 nowadays, when they've gone through something, God forbid, and they have to start back over at 1. I was in isolation. I built myself up, and now I got to go back into isolation.
Absolutely agree with that. This says, in the early 1990s, 55% of men were reported to have 6 or more close friends. That percentage dwindled down to 27 in 2021, according to the American Perspective Survey. Now, 15% of men say they have no close personal friendships, data compiled by the Survey Center on American Life found. I think a big reason for this is because men are taught to prioritize a career. After all, women tend to go for men who are more successful, who make more money, who are, have a higher social status who do well in their career or make good money for themselves. And I think a lot of men also do this with the hopes that it will improve their dating life as well. Obviously, we know that women tend to look for men who are at their level or above, so it would make sense why men would then feel an extra need to prioritize their career, because they think, okay, well, if I don't, then I'm probably not going to end up with the girl that I want or whatever. And as women, become more successful, we're earning 60% of bachelor's degrees. It makes sense why this is the case. Isolation is not healthy. It's obviously not good for the friendships in your life, but also for romantic relationships. It's having a lot of negative consequences there. And that leads me into my next point, which is dating apps, social media, and porn. This excerpt says, young men are watching a lot of social media, they're watching a lot of porn, and I think they're getting a lot of their needs met without having to go out. Young men are excessively turning to porn to satiate their sexual needs, which in turn is causing long-term consequences to their sexual well-being. Important aspects of mating strategy have been completely removed from dating altogether with the rise of apps and social media. You no longer get to experience the entirety of another human, and you're merely reduced to a set of photos and a one-sentence bio. But there are so many more things about men that make them attractive to women and make women like them. When you get to experience someone in person, there are so many more things that are added to the equation in terms of finding someone attractive than just the way that they look. But when you're only being exposed to the way someone looks and nothing else, and you can't experience that person at all, their humor, their charisma, the way they interact with people, the way they carry themselves, you're completely eliminating all of the other aspects that make men attractive to women. So it's no surprise that most men aren't getting matches or having any success on dating apps, and therefore aren't dating. They aren't meeting people outside of their house or even from the convenience of their own homes on the apps. And the men who tend to do very well on dating apps are men who are extremely attractive or take really good photos, and all the women are swiping on them and not really swiping on the average looking men, because then they swipe and see the very attractive guy and they match and they automatically think, okay, well, if I can get that, I'm not going to go for anything less than that. But it's just an illusion of options. The next cause is situationships and hookup culture. So this has had a significant impact on the dating landscape in recent years and has had a multitude of negative consequences. One being the devaluation of traditional relationships. Many people now view dating and relationships as temporary and even disposable, rather than something to be cherished or nurtured over time. This can then lead to a lack of emotional intimacy and detachment when it comes to dating, and then leads to increased loneliness as more people struggle to find a genuine connection. Again, this is one of the most common responses I got when I asked people on my Instagram, what are the biggest struggles you're facing right now? Situationships, hookup culture, people just wanting to talk for months and then nothing happens, nobody wanting to commit. And a fear of commitment is another byproduct of this, partly caused by the illusion of endless options and the fact that people are just going through each other like hotcakes. If you're constantly thinking, oh, I can get something better, or oh, I have all these options, it makes commitment a little bit scarier. The next one here is women's standards. So even seasoned researchers struggle to fully account for the relationship gap between young women and men. If single young men outnumber single young women nearly 2-to-1, then who are all of the young women dating, this says? Young women are also dating and marrying slightly older men, carrying on a tradition that stretches back more than a century. The average age at first marriage is around 30 for men, 28 for women, according to census figures. Heterosexual women are getting more choosy. Women don't want to marry down to form a long-term relationship to a man with less education and earnings than herself, said Ronald Levant, professor of psychology at the University of Akron and author of several books on masculinity.
And I guess this is what always gets me. Like, I'm marrying down because you're not at my education level. You do know that academic education is not the only education out there. Modern women, they pick what they think is better and then they sell it to a man. And when a man doesn't buy it, then they get mad at a man and say a man is less than. Because a man isn't accepting their BS value or their BS valuation of themselves.
Again, I have made many videos on women's standards and preferences in men, and I think The terms preferences and standards are often used interchangeably when in fact that is not how they should be used. And I think as women have this illusion of options, again, as I mentioned before, they feel as though they can be more picky with the men that they're dating. When in reality, just because you match with someone on a dating app doesn't mean that that's going to progress to the next level, or that guy that you're obsessed with isn't talking to 10 other women. All of these points I talked about have drastically changed dating as we know it. I think dating today is much different than it even was 5 years ago. And I don't really know what the future looks like for dating. And transparently, it took me a while to make this video because I didn't just want to sit here and present all the problems to you and end on kind of a good luck, Chuck. I really want to find solutions. I want to be able to give you guys ways to fix the problems I've outlined today. So I have some thoughts about this overall, and I would obviously love to hear yours down in the comments from a male point of view. If you're a woman watching this, obviously would love to hear what you think as well. But I think really getting a male perspective here would be helpful for me. I think it's also helpful for people trying to understand this issue as a whole. But I really do think this is a cultural challenge. It doesn't benefit men or women either, truth be told. And I think it's showing a huge lack of connection between the largest participating parties of our human existence. And again, although these issues are at a large scale level, I do believe that there are some things you can do as an individual that could certainly help. And of course, there are going to be aspects that are totally out of control, but I do think that it all starts with you. And these might sound silly, so bear with me, but the first solution I have is to get out of the house. We have seen that isolation is causing a lot of problems. Social media is causing a lot of problems. Not knowing where to meet women, not going anywhere, feeling stuck and alone is causing a lot of issues. So for dating success, yes, I think this will make a difference, but also for your own mental health and well-being, you could join a club or a group, take a workout class, nurture the friendships in your life, make effort to put yourself out there and get out of the comfort of your own home. I think a lot of problems that men experience come from loneliness and isolation. So doing your best to combat both of those things by getting out and meeting people, and not even necessarily in a romantic way, friendships too. But I think this could work wonders on improving your sociability and your overall well-being. The next thing is to stop watching porn and paying for explicit content. This is instant gratification with long-term negative consequences at its finest. In my opinion, it's just no good all around. Porn makes more money than the NBA, Major League Baseball, and NFL combined. Let that sink in. I don't think we can act like this isn't a big deal because clearly it is. It's a rabbit hole. It creates weird and transactional experiences with women. It also keeps men isolated since you feel like you're filling a sexual void without even having to leave your house or put in any effort with women. And don't get me wrong, I understand that's what some of you are looking for, but consider the fact that that is potentially part of the problem here. Another solution I have is to work on being the best you and be what you want to attract, as cliche as that sounds. I know it's easier said than done, but at the end of the day, you have to become someone that the person you want to be with would want to be with too. And I will be transparent, I have no idea what it's like to be a man. I don't know what it's like to feel so lonely that you turn to paying women on the internet to talk to you, or feeling hopeless and invisible and then not putting in any effort. I don't know what that's like, transparently. I'm not trying to discredit the way that you feel or just completely neglect your own experience as a man, but I do think that being a victim and wallowing in it and becoming hateful and bitter is the worst thing that you could possibly do. And I think that being the best you that you can be is something that everyone should be striving for, men and women. And this will obviously look different from person to person depending on who you are and what you want in life. We aren't all the same, and that's okay. But as long as you're working and making an effort towards being the best version of you, I think you're already on the right track. And again, just something to keep in mind is the better you are on your own, the more confident and happy and fulfilled you are by yourself, the more happy you're going to be when you enter a relationship and you're with someone else too. Really, the point I want to make with this video is that we are obviously having some issues, right? If 63% of men under 30 are single, we have some problems. And I think by bringing awareness to that and just really going through some of the statistics and making people aware can really make a huge difference, especially, I don't want to toot my own horn here, but from a woman's perspective, I think sometimes our society or just people online don't necessarily take men seriously. And I'm really, truly, I know that sounds so grifty of me to say that, But I mean that to my core. I think a lot of the time, sometimes it resonates with people more, and more women start to listen when they hear it from other women too. So I really just wanted to highlight this issue, make it known.
And I think you raise a great point with saying that most people online don't listen to men. There was I think a video I just did with the singles event. A woman, she literally went down through the comments reading why men don't go to singles events, and then decided to blame them for them being the reason as to why they didn't go to singles events. Well, how come men aren't coming? I'm telling you right here in the comments why I'm not there. And you still don't accept the reason why I'm not coming. Then you wait a year later. It's the same old cycle. You wait a year later when you say, okay, well, I'm celibate now and I'm swearing off dating, I ain't gonna talk to no men. You wait a year later and you have the same conversation with men again. And men tell you the same thing. And you go through the same cycle where a year or two later, you're asking the same questions again, like men didn't tell you what was up.
Am I wrong for this? Anytime I tell this story, no one ever agrees with me. But I swear when I think about it, I'm right. So when I first moved to Atlanta, I didn't know anybody. And I joined Bumble and matched with this guy, right? We had been talking, I think for like 2 or 3 weeks. And I got a good vibe. So anyway, I had asked him if he knew any handy people. Because I had a lot of like furniture coming into my apartment. And I needed help putting it together. Although I did not know him well enough, I trusted him enough to come to my apartment. Now, in hindsight, that was probably a bad idea. But it is what I did. So before he came to my apartment, I had a conversation with him about payment because I didn't want for him to come and I didn't like him and then he felt like he got. So we talked about payment and I told him I'd give him a certain amount for him putting together like 2 pieces of furniture. Well, he put together a bed and a desk. So I don't remember exactly how much we agreed on, but I did say I was going to sell him the money. So when he came over like early this Saturday morning and he ended up like starting right away. He was definitely somebody that I could see myself talking to on the long haul. So it was cool. Like he was we were getting to know each other. We were talking about family. We were talking about life, all this kind of stuff. So around lunchtime, I ordered us something to eat. And as we were eating, we were like really talking, right? It was good. So when he was done, he kind of like chilled for like another couple of hours just to like rest. And we were really vibing and he was like, I would really like to see you again. And I was like, cool. So when he's ready to go, we go outside and he gives me a hug. And then he was like, okay, so I'm going to text you my Zelle information so you can send the payment. And I'm like, okay. In the moment, I was just a little shocked, but I didn't like let it on. I was just like, okay, just text it to me. So the next day I sent the Zelle payment and I was just like, oh, thank you for coming over. I really appreciate it. And then I didn't say anything else. And he was texting me and I did not respond. And he wasn't used to that because obviously we have been like texting all day long, you know, talking throughout the day. It was good at that time. But then I just decided that the fact of him asking me for money after like we had a good day, and I do understand that we agreed upon it, but I just thought it would be different since we were going to start dating. So finally he asked me like, what's up? And I was just like, honestly, I know we decided that I would pay you for that, but I really thought it was tacky that you actually asked me for the money afterwards and you took it. So I did end up cutting it off and we didn't talk again. But when I told my cousin about it, she was like, you guys agreed on it. Like, I don't understand what the problem was. And honestly, like, if I'm gonna date you and, you know, you put together some furniture for me, you're gonna charge me? I don't know. Like, what do you guys think?
I think that you need to keep your word. You told that man, hey, I'll give this to you. Y'all weren't really even in a long-term relationship like that. Y'all, I think you said we're just really honestly and truly just starting to talk. So you still owe him. You said, what y'all will do is y'all will flirt and then have the man do it for free and then be like, oh, you know, I think we're just friends. And then act like the man, he didn't see what he saw, or he didn't feel what he felt, or he didn't see the vibe or the signals that you were giving off. And then you're going to call him a creep and block him.
I stand firm on and 10 toes down on. If a man is not going to put his life on the line, meaning cover you spiritually, financially, physically, everything, then do not put your life and your body on the line to have his child. I don't think men who don't desire marriage should have children. And I say this because men want, again, not God-fearing, not the secure ones. I'm talking about the insecure ones. A lot of men want the perks of legacy, of children, of kids having their last name, and they did nothing to work for it.
Yeah, you must be talking about bums. And these are the exact people that women give a chance to. The bums. The man that, from the jump, they're not hiding it. They're not going to give you anything of substance. But I tell you what you're going to do. You're going to give them your body. And when they don't give you what you thought they were going to give you, then you're mad at them and all men.
Timeline to prove it. And I'm literally in the middle of moving. That's why I look raggedy, but I cannot handle these fucking lies anymore. Jada is currently on her Pay Attention to Me tour, and she is making all these wild claims, including that Tupac proposed to her while he was at Rikers. Really? The math isn't mathing, so let's take a look. Tupac was convicted of sexual assault charges on February 8th, 1995. From there, he was sent to Rikers Prison, only to be transferred less than a month later to Clinton Correctional Facility. And she specifically said she went to see him. This was not on the phone.
Book when I go to see him in Rikers, probably one of the more painful parts, seeing him there, the condition that he was in and having to leave him there.
Cool. So prior to going into Rikers, Tupac already had a girlfriend named Keisha. He proposed to Keisha, her words, in a September 2011 interview. He proposed to Keisha before he even went into prison. They were already engaged. They got married in April. And in the time that he got sentenced and was taken to prison, Keisha actually moved closer to be by him and be by the prison and saw him on a near daily basis.
When he asked me to get married, he was at Rikers.
So you're telling me that in the 3 to 4 week window that he was at Rikers, engaged to another woman who had moved closer to the prison and was there almost every day, Tupac proposed to Jada. But hey, Jess, you might be saying to yourself, Tupac wasn't known to be a one-woman man. He was no angel. Fair enough. Let's see where Jada was during February of 1995, which was, as we've already established, the only time she would have been able to see Tupac at Rikers since he was only there for less than a month. You see, Jada had already met Will Smith in 1994 on the set of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but Will Smith was married, and so nothing happened between them. But in February of 1995, Will Smith was served divorce papers by his wife. 5 days later, on February 19th, Will called Jada and said, "Are you single?" And she said, "Yep." Will said, "We're together now." Jada said, "Cool." And she immediately flew to LA. She flew so immediately that when he called her, she was in Maryland at a brand new house she bought. And she never spent a single night in her new house. That's how immediately she flew to LA. When, in all that time, did you visit Tupac at Rikers and get this fucking proposal? And for the record, Keisha and Tupac stayed married for about 10 months. They got their marriage annulled about 4 or 5 months after Tupac was released from prison. He was bailed out by Suge Knight. It wasn't long after that he met Kidada Jones. Kidada Jones is the daughter of legendary Quincy Jones. Kidada looks a little recognizable. You may know her sister, Rashida Jones, who played Karen on The Office. Kidada and Tupac were living together and engaged when Tupac was shot and killed. Kidada was the one that was there with him at the hospital the night he died. Kidada was handed his bloody clothes. She was the one who told him, "We all love you," before he slipped into a coma and never woke up. Keisha spoke with Tupac several days before he died because even though their marriage was annulled, they still remained good friends. And I can't help but notice that all of the women who are actually part of his life in a meaningful way are the ones that have just kept quiet. They've kept silent. They've kept their memories to themselves and not tried to use a dead man as their limelight. And the person who's squawking about him the most is making claims that can't even be verified and don't make sense from the perspective of a verifiable timeline.
He needed a rock. Because of our friendship and because of everything we had been through together, he just wanted to feel that solidified foundation. Right.
None at all.
None. You know? And
he did get the best, but not from Jada, because per Will Smith's own words, that him and Jada were pretty much humping all over the world. They were traveling constantly from the first 3 months they were together, all over the world. So Tupac did get some great support, I imagine, from his wife, who moved closer to be with him and visited him every day. And why do I care? Because I'm Gen X. And like any good Gen X person, I grew up on Tupac. We all remember this going down. We all remember where we were when we heard that Tupac got shot or that he died. We all had this fucking hat from Poetic Justice, walking around looking like newsies, slinging newspaper about the Great Depression and FDR. And we're all just sitting here watching Jada spout these lies, being like, do you think no one remembers? Because we all remember. Pepperidge Farm remembers.
And what you're probably seeing right now is the result of Jada going to some sort of spiritualist or therapist, quote unquote, who encourages you to explore those innermost thoughts, those untapped or untouched, unexplored areas where you're afraid of them. You've repressed them. Those are the areas that you've been told, at least in your mind, not to go. You've told yourself, don't go there. But now, in 2025 is an awakening. Go there. Explore that. Live free. Live uninhibited. And live a bold-faced lie.
Watch his sick child.
I gotta be at work. And he don't want to watch my kid. How you don't want to watch your own child? And I gotta be at work. He is sick, so I have to take my sick son to work with me. On top of me having a little cold myself, and I still make it happen. I'm not like a sick or mucus don't stop me from working. Don't stop me.
I got stuff I gotta do. I'm not watching him. It's your responsibility. It's your responsibility.
You work on your phone.
Man, I'm not watching him.
You don't do nothing but be on your phone.
You heard what I said, man. I'm not watching him. That's your responsibility.
And don't ask me for nothing. When these checks start coming, don't ask me for nothing.
I don't
not
care.
A
I never did care about your money. I never did care about your money. You always trying on me. You always trying to throw him on me. Them are your responsibilities.
But I gotta take my
as a mother.
A couple of weeks ago, I said this. Ladies, I'm getting ready to tell you something that raggedy men all around the world already know. The easiest way for them to derail your success, for them to interfere with your future, is to make you the mother of one of their children. I need you to guard your womb even more than you guard your heart. As I said in that video, there are some men that use children as punishment for the mother. You might have a career, or you might be trying to go to school, or you might be trying to start a business, or something that you're doing, or even just who you are. They want to be attached to you so bad, or derail you from achieving something so bad, they want to slow you down. And this is the real reason why they don't want you child free. The reason why they rail against women who have their own careers and make their own money and don't have any children, because they know that that makes you less vulnerable to settle for them. They want you desperate. They want you vulnerable. They don't want you to want them. They want you to need them. Look at how he acts when she needs him. This man has a job where he's at home and works on the phone. So it's so much easier for him to stay home with the sick child. But he won't do it because it's her responsibility. Because he gave her the baby. They want the mom to have all the responsibility. They just want to pop in for the pictures. They want to pop in for the Father's Day post and post a picture of them with their son, the son they know nothing about. This is why they despise child-free women that make their own money. Now, she also bears responsibility for where she is in life right now, because I'm sure he showed signs and clues of this kind of behavior long before she made this man a father. Not every man deserves to be a father. When you see the clues and the red flags, you have to be extra careful with those kind of men. They impregnate women on purpose so they can treat them like this. If he's a horrible boyfriend, more than likely he's going to be a horrible baby daddy and a horrible husband. Like, I don't care how many times you kiss this frog, he's still not going to all of a sudden become a prince.
Well, I'm glad you finally got to what the actual issue was. And that's these modern women are picking these men, knowing full well this man has showed you who he is, what he's up to, and how he's going to move. But once again, modern women are picking terribly. And even when they found out, oops, I think I've made a mistake. But you know what? I want a child. So I'm going to go ahead and lay down with this man anyway. I mean, it's just as good as any. Okay, well, now you're getting what was owed to you, what was always going to be coming to you.
63% of males in the United States are single, in comparison to 34% of their female counterparts. Men only have a 2.5% chance of finding a match. That's one match per 40 swipes on average on online dating apps, whereas women match 50% of the time, one match per 2 swipes on average. But the dismissal of men doesn't stop there. 90% of jobs requiring hard manual labor are held by men. Men make up around 84% of active duty military personnel in the United States. But that doesn't specify combat arms roles. You know, the ones who actually risk their lives. Over 95% of combat arms roles are filled by men. And in special ops, well, women are nowhere to be found. And to dig the knife even further, 79% of suicides in the United States are committed by men. Despite their efforts to provide and protect women and children, they're left hung out to dry when 70% of divorces are initiated by women. In part 1 of Why Are 63% of Men Single?, I got over 1,500 comments from angry, hurting, and wounded men who are fed up with these statistics and many others that I just laid out for you. But before I get into this video, I do want to provide a disclaimer. If you can't watch this video with an open mind, then this will likely be a waste of your time. So if that's you, click off now. But if you choose to watch this video, you'll start to understand the other side of this coin, which is how women are contributing to this epidemic, and more importantly, how it's harming them more than they realize. As always, leave your intelligent comments below. Sprinkle, sprinkle, bitch. Let's get into it. And this brings me to my first point. Social media. The ability to garner mass attention through social media is not news. Yet women seem to be able to do this at a much larger scale, and these results boost their ego as they continue to gain this attention and traction. But the attention they get, especially from men, aren't necessarily men that they'd ever give the time of day to. Yet they continue to do it and promote further engagement. Why? When we look at behaviors on social media, we do see differences between men and women, how they post and how they interact. And women on average spend much more time on social media, and their focus is typically on connections and communication. Men, on the other hand, tend to, yes, use social media platforms for their own entertainment, but mostly, as far as the research shows, for information. And the research also shows that women tend to gain both a larger following and further engagement than men typically do, specifically on visual platforms like Instagram and TikTok. And this makes sense if you took 5 seconds to scroll any of these social media platforms. And because they tend to garner bigger audiences relative to beauty, lifestyle, fitness, etc., it also tends to amplify their voices and their messages, which I'll get to in a little bit. And while we can talk about the niches and the topics of conversation, I also don't want to skimp over the fact that there's typically lots of skin showing, and this tends to garner further traction and growth, which only re-emphasizes the point that in order for women to get noticed, well, their beauty and their physical assets are the most important thing. On top of this, research does show that women tend to garner a bigger following through sharing stories and emotional connection. And we also know from a psychological lens that women tend to gossip much more than men do. And social media tends to promote, well, drama. So the maths here. Now, I don't want to paint this picture that men can't be successful on social media platforms because the evidence would also be contrary to that. But as far as in comparison to, women do tend to outperform men, again, specifically on these visual platforms. So why am I hitting on this? Well, relative to my last video with 1,500 plus comments around the toxicity of women, social media and the amplification of their voice and also how they garner audiences plays a role in this dynamic playing itself out.
And that's why I was making a point. Nowadays, it used to be, women still gossiped. They haven't changed, but they didn't have social media. And so largely a lot of what they said back then would stay within the group. Nowadays, modern women don't have any problem talking about anything. They'll get online, talk about how they're about to leave their man, talk about divorcing their man and the man doing them wrong, the man not wanting to give them any money, the man not wanting to be a friend to them. There have been women that have gotten on here and cried, gotten mad at the man because after she left him, he no longer wanted to be her emotional support. Oh, I'm having a hard, I'm not joking. Literally, oh, I'm having a hard day. And, my ex-husband, he didn't want to call me and be my emotional support. He left him. Why would he do that? You made the decision to walk out on him. Why would he want to support you emotionally? He's literally not obligated. And that doesn't even make any sense.
With the discrepancy in followers and engagement, this can fuel toxic feminism or feminist ideals, and this can contribute over time to further animosity towards men. Now, the interesting thing about social media and its parts is that women tend to gain traction by being visually appealing, only to then be upset when men pay attention to how physically appealing they are. But the reinforcement of positive feedback around gaining followers, engagement, comments, whatever it might be, only reinforces women to continue to behave in this way publicly. And this can inadvertently promote the idea that a woman's value lies in her aesthetics or her social appeal. And this can reinforce the narrative, as we've seen many, many times, that women are all, well, promiscuous, while men can be excluded or marginalized in these spaces. The hard part about this, or the female argument to this type of behavior, is that it is somehow empowering, or at least that's what we tell ourselves. While from a man's perspective, while they enjoy women being a little bit more loose online, they also tend to associate that with a lower quality female. Now, what's important to note around this entire concept in attraction, relationships, whatever it is, women tend to set the standard for sexual intimacy, which is a really important point, and I will get to that later in this video. Now, toxic feminism can and has emerged when women perceive their higher success on these platforms as a form of empowerment that positions men as less relevant or inherently problematic. And this feeds into the negative stereotype of men's role in society. Pair that with the feedback loop of monetary payouts, and you can reinforce this behavior even at the expense of one's self-respect and self-worth. It's also important to note, as I alluded to earlier, that social media platforms tend to reward polarizing content, and this can lead to the amplification of much more radical concepts and extremist feminist voices, which tends to portray men as inherently oppressive or completely responsible for any type of systemic inequality. And while these perspectives tend to gain significant engagement, it can also encourage the narrative of complete victimhood when it comes to women, leading to further antagonism towards men. And this will continue to lead to further hostility and division between the genders, as we can see if you've read my comment section. And because men tend to experience lower engagement on social media, due to the fact that they simply engage with and tend to create different types of content, whether that be that they're less driven or focused on their own perception of aesthetics or looks, or just less emotionally charged than women are, which is true, it may not perform as well and therefore not garner such a radical audience. And this can lead to a perception that men are completely disengaged or irrelevant, which can then further lead into amplifying feminist narratives that men are not important or not engaged or don't care. And this will continue to lead narratives that degrade men and, well, push them to be resentful of women and their overall behavior. And this can compound feelings of inadequacy towards men, especially if they feel like their voices aren't valued. And this again leads to further polarizing domains between the genders. Now, as women continue to gain success and traction, while there's a side effect of communities that they engage with as well. As I touched on MGTOW and Red Pill in the last video, I do want to make sure that I address the fact that there are female communities which tend to lead to misandry towards men. And this can oversimplify the gender dynamic and create us versus them mentalities. Now, what happens when men speak up, especially relative to the differences between men and women in their success or engagement on social media platforms, is that men are then contributing to a problem, or they feel intimidated by women when they're just acknowledging a difference in success. And one thing we know about social media and building audiences is that oftentimes you can kind of sound an alarm that may or may not be real. And I don't just mean this in social media, but I don't want to get into actual CNN, Fox News, and all the other platforms that shove shit down your throat that may not actually be based in reality. But to this degree, the more that there's no barrier to entry and anybody can come online and say anything, well, we can start to create narratives that have some truth but take it to the extreme. And this is where women tend to hyperfixate on gender inequalities, the pay gaps, oppression, the patriarchy, you name it, it's been said many, many times. And this can then turn into a blame game where women blame all men for every problem and treat them as if they're responsible.
And what you'll continue to find with these women is, outside of the major things, they'll be out here making stuff up. Like, where'd you even get that from? Oh, well, what about this and what about that? And that's why we choose to bear. And it's like, where'd you even get that from? There was a woman who was reacting to a clip, and in the clip, a woman was running a race. She was running a race, and her friend had flown in just to watch her finish the race, and that's it. And instead of saying, man, that's just a beautiful moment, wow, a friend flying in from another country to watch another friend finish the race, she turned it to, and this is why men or excuse me, this is why women don't want to get or married, or that this is why they would rather not have men, is because if your friend is going to fly in, and I think her ultimate point was men won't do this for you. But the clip had nothing to do with men, like at all, anywhere. And she still took a U-turn and drove it straight into the building where men would be. I'm going to drive this point straight back to men. And you're like, how did it even become our fault? Well, where did we come in this? And you even had women in the comments saying, what does this have to do with men? Did I miss something? This took a left turn quickly. Men get blamed for stuff, the major points, and even stuff that modern women out here are making up.
And this leads to rhetoric that completely demonizes men, rather than addressing the actual causes of some of these things. Specifically when we look at them oriented towards equal outcome. And when followers engage with and promote this type of content, it normalizes misandry, escalating the tension between the genders, and completely removes the underlying reasons as to why some of these outcomes are things that we witness, which, again, I'll get to in a little bit. But overall, this puts a lot of pressure on men to conform to be a certain way, changing their standards, submitting to women, or making their masculinity toxic or outdated. And this can lead to reactions such as retreating to male-dominated spaces, as I mentioned in my last video. And this is where, especially if life circumstances led men to engage with women who were very toxic, that their perception can be a bit jaded towards, well, what does a modern woman want, and is she even worth it? And this is just the first point. We're gonna be here a while, so grab a drink, get comfortable. We've got a lot to talk about. And this brings me to my next point, dating apps. As I alluded to earlier, 75% of users, specifically in research oriented towards Tinder, are men. But the amount of swiping that men have to go through, and reflective of the algorithm and what it tends to promote, a lot of men, well, they get overlooked. Whereas women, on the other hand, have a 50% chance of finding success in a match, meaning I could swipe twice and find somebody that would match with me. Whereas a man might have to swipe 40 times and maybe will get one match. And this allows women to be much more selective, while men tend to experience further rejection. And this will lead to further feelings of inadequacy, neglect, and frustration. For many men, especially those that are not deemed conventionally attractive, this entire experience can feel like an uphill battle. And because dating apps emphasize visual attraction, and men often face rejection solely based on their appearance, men who may excel in other areas or have just better overall character traits or qualities tend to get overlooked in favor of more visually appealing profiles, which leads to a sense of devaluation or pressure to conform to a certain standard of high value man. And we also have to note that algorithms on each of these dating apps varies a bit differently. And those who tend to receive more engagement also tend to get promoted a little bit more often. And this disproportionately benefits the more attractive people, while leaving the majority of men struggling for visibility. On top of all of this, any type of dating online values aesthetics over all of the things that actually make a relationship work. And this leads to shallow and surface level interactions between the genders and themselves. Men being more valued for their status and women being more valued for their sexual appeal. And this will foster a sense of transactional relationships and reduce the opportunity to build actually deep and meaningful connections. In my last video, I talked about the negative impacts of rejection on men's mental health, so I won't dive back into that here. But just know men's sense of rejection and the way that it impacts their self-esteem is really important, highly valuable, and a consequence to how all of this social and cultural pressure in the domain of feminism and social media, dating apps, all contributes to the experiences that men are having, and the reason why many of them are self-selecting and choosing to stay single. Where social media and dating apps can completely polarize gender dynamics, with a very small percentage of high-status men getting a lot of attention, while many men feel completely visible. Now, one important thing to note here is the paradox of choice, and both men and women can experience this phenomenon. But this is where having too many options can lead to complete dissatisfaction. Women who tend to have way more matches also tend to struggle with making a commitment to one person, because there's always someone or something better lurking right around the corner. And men on the other side of the coin might feel completely disheartened by a lack of options or being repeatedly passed over. Now, I did allude to earlier that women tend to set the standard for men regarding sex. And the cultural shift towards dating apps and service level hookups makes casual sex more accessible and prevalent to both genders.
I think even talking about the hookup culture thing, A lot of women are doing this for increase. I'm trying to be careful here. They're doing it for credits to certain areas of their life. You get a credit for that, right? And so modern women have kind of adopted that in terms of dating. I need you to fund my lifestyle. If you're not doing this, then what are you even doing? And they say it and they snap their fingers like, ooh, yeah, get it, girl, get the bag. You're selling yourself. You make yourself cheap. You're not really anything that a man would need. Because if you say, well, I'm special, you're going to have to take me on a date to a nice restaurant. But the woman beside you is kind of saying that same thing. And all of y'all are parroting that same thing. Well, the man can just continue over and over again if he wants to. Most men go in the house besides that point. But he could just say, okay, well, another woman's going to say the exact same thing. And there's going to be one that gets tired. There's going to be one that is not on a celibacy journey, and she's going to say, man, I really miss the touch of a man. I'm about to break my vow of celibacy. And you think I'm joking, but a woman said, I'd rather be in a situationship and everything that comes with it just to feel the touch of a man. I haven't touched a man. A man hasn't touched me or talked to me or hugged me or cuddled me in over a year.
For men, this tends to amplify short-term dating approaches over long-term commitments. And women tend to lie to themselves, telling themselves that they're just like men and can do this in the same fashion. However, the easier it is to access, the lower the level of effort that men will give. And so even if women are genuinely seeking deeper connections, they also should align their standards and expectations for men that they allow themselves to engage with to be much higher than they currently are. Which brings me to my next point, and it's a very important one. The concept of hypergamy. The number of comments in my last video discussing hypergamy leads me to believe that more than a 10-second clip in this video is going to do this concept justice. So first, let's look at and understand what this actually means. Hypergamy is the idea that women tend to marry up. As far as gender dynamics, women date up and across, and men date across and down. This could be relevant to status, IQ, material items, but perceived differences between the sexes. Simply put, we're always looking for something better. And this is a complex subject, and it is also rooted in evolutionary psychology, which is one of my favorite domains of psychology to investigate. But some would argue that this is a cultural, societal norm, while others say it's just gender dynamics. And the mere mention of this term can trigger people or spark debates. While some see this as a natural biological instinct, others argue that it's a social construct that's been molded by culture and upbringing. So what's the truth here? Traditionally, this concept makes a lot of sense, where women needed financial security and a provider in order to make sure that they were safe and secure. But because nowadays, with the cultural changes in women's rights movements, women are able to cultivate their own levels of perceived independence, which shifts this dynamic on its head. And many men, as a contrast to that, currently feel like hypergamy creates a lot of unrealistic expectations and standards for men. Many men have reported that despite their own accomplishments, it's just never enough. And for women, as far as their ability to create their own wealth or achieve their own education and success, autonomy and independence, the idea of a relationship and what it used to bring them has somewhat changed. And this disconnect, transparently, I believe, is leading it to a massive disconnect on both sides. And if I were to bring data into this conversation, it shows that educated and financially successful women are struggling to find men, which complicates the modern dating world for both genders. It's also important to note that whether this is a biological driver or something that is culturally imposed, either way it leads to dissatisfaction. One of the most important points that I can allude to here, and yes, I do want to be transparent, this is my own personal opinion, women don't know what they need. They just perceive what they want, what they're supposed to do, who they're supposed to be with, the type of guy that would make them valuable enough or worthy enough to feel good about who they are and what their worth or value really comes down to. This is also one of the contrasts where women tend to tell themselves that they can be just like men. Now, this does not mean that women who really do enjoy sexual interactions with men are wrong, but I do not believe that the majority of women actually enjoy engaging in that at a surface level, transactionary level. Many men in my comment section will say that they just want virgins, and if you're that guy, I will say it might be difficult for you to find somebody that's above the age of 18. But that does not mean that there is not value that women should have around their bodies, around sexual intercourse, around giving themselves to somebody else.
And that's the point. Most men aren't expecting you to be a virgin. It'd be great if you could find that, but most men have done a little bit a lot of men have done a little bit themselves. They've experimented, so they kind of know. A lot of the issue comes in when women, they're just going crazy. They're going crazy. They're blowing. We talk about pair bonding, and you lose your ability to pair bond after 5 people that you've been with. We talked about, I think there was one article that talked about women who have 6 to 10 bodies. They're going to struggle in marriage or something like that. Something that to that effect. Y'all are going way past 6 to 10. Some of these women are at 20 are at 20 bodies by 20 years old. It's a total breakdown of discipline. And then you want a man to come in and pay for that. How? Why would he? What value is it to a man that everybody has had a piece of you, but he's supposed to pay top dollar? Yikes.